the Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics with Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of Base Patrick Henry. Hope everyone is doing well. Let's check out the chat. All right, everyone's filing in. Well, happy Friday, everybody. Man, what a week. Crazy week. Lots of wild things happening. Too many things happening, honestly. And I know we always say that, but it really is the case this week. And actually did not get to do a geopolitical segment on Tuesday on Badlands Daily. Didn't get to do one on Wednesday on Breaking History. So that kind of puts all the pressure on this show. I think this show might need to start being a more regular occurrence given everything that's happening, because there's like too many. There's like too much stuff to track for the whole week. There's too many storylines, and we spent 40 minutes last week on just the Israel. So I don't know. That's something I'm gonna have to think about over the weekend and maybe come up with something, because from what I can tell, we have the world is it's falling apart, is on fire right now, and it looks like, from what I can tell, the posturing is going to be Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin hopefully coming together. I mean, yes, coming together, definitely coming together, but I'm saying coming together to tackle all these challenges and kind of becoming the new bedrock of, I think, a new emerging world order, multipolar world order. And that is something that's going to have to be, it's going to have to play out. But in the meantime, I think we're going to see everything kind of fall apart. And yeah, I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to throw on the jacket. I'm going to try to be a little more polished on this show. And we're going to try to compete with, the other people who are out there forwarding narratives that, some of which I agree with. I actually found myself reading some articles that these people are being attacked and criticized by even people in the Trump administration. And then I read the article and I'm like, I actually agree with what the article says. So we're entering a weird time, man. It's almost like there's going to be like a civil war within our movement, because there's just so much disagreement about what's actually happening. There's so much deception and so many lies and so much misinformation and misdirection. And there seems to be an earnest effort to take us back to the Bush era of Jangoism and world police, and let's go to war with everybody. Let's go to war with Iran. Let's go to war with China. Let's go to war with Russia. And it's sick. It's like, I can see that face coming back to like the Republican Party, and we have to absolutely stop that. So with that said, let's hit the first ad, and then we'll get into it.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupting this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillows, only $14.98. Queens, $18.98. King size, only $1 more. Body pillows, $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the commercial. All right, so let's start with we'll kind of start with the latest and greatest breaking news, and that would be Ukraine. So we'll go to Ukraine, and then because last week we started in the Middle East, and we pretty much spent the whole show doing that. I have I think 35 or 40 tabs open, and there's no way we're going to get to all those stories. So I'm trying to skip over because I have multiple tabs for like each story. So I'm going to have to move quickly. Okay, so the headline here, Kiev again violated U.S.-backed energy ceasefire, Moscow. And the story is that American-designed HIMARS artillery was used in one of the 3 latest attacks on infrastructure, according to the defense ministry, the Russian defense ministry. The Ukrainian military has attacked Russia's energy infrastructure in 3 separate regions, again violating a U.S.-mediated moratorium on such strikes. The defense ministry in Moscow has claimed. The incidents recorded over the past 24 hours took place in Belgorod, Kursk, and Saratov regions of Russia, the Friday statement said. On Thursday, Ukrainian artillery struck an element of the Russian power grid in Belgorod region, disrupting the power supply in Shebinkino near the international border, the report said. A separate incident involved HIMARS artillery strikes on the Sutska gas metering station in Kursk, where the energy site was de facto destroyed. The ministry had previously accused Kiev of damaging the facility with planted explosive charges as its forces were retreating from the area. So it does seem like that Kiev is trying to, the global regime is trying to disrupt the peace talks that have been unfolding this week. And so let's walk all the way back to Monday. Monday, we had in Riyadh, we had the Russians and meet with the Americans. Excuse me. And that came up with what is known as the I'm sorry, that's the wrong tab. The Black Sea agreement. So the U.S. from Axios, the U.S. reached agreements with Russia and Ukraine on ensuring safe navigation in the Black Sea and on developing measures for implementing a ban on strikes against energy facilities in Russia and Ukraine, the White House said on Tuesday. Why it matters. The 2 separate statements the White House issued about the talks with Russia and Ukraine didn't make clear what practical steps are going to be taken and when I just had my contact slip. And when a ceasefire in the Black Sea is going into effect. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry confirmed an agreement was reached on an unconditional ceasefire in the Black Sea. Shortly after, the Kremlin issued a statement laying out new conditions and stressing its agreement to the ceasefire is contingent on lifting of some of the sanctions imposed on Russia. So Monday and Tuesday, we had meetings in Riyadh between the Steve Witkoff led coalition. The reports are, by the way, this is coming from, it's reported, I think, back in early March by various outlets that Marco Rubio is miserable and that he is upset about, or that he's basically getting worked to the bone and he just feels like it's like a grueling pace. That those are the reports in the media. You have to disregard that stuff or take it with a grain of salt because it's the media, of course. But then Colonel McGregor actually said the same thing, like yesterday or the day before, and on Judge Napolitano's show. And what he according to McGregor, he said that Marco Rubio is upset because Steve Witkoff has basically taken the lead on the Ukraine situation and is now like running the show there. And it's interesting with this U.S. envoy thing is when you really stop and think about what a U.S. envoy is, when you appoint a U.S. envoy, I'm sorry, it wasn't McGregor, it was Colonel Wilkerson said that. Wilkerson was in the Bush administration. And what Wilkerson said is that when George Bush asked Colin Powell to be Secretary of State, Powell said, I will only do it under one condition: if you don't appoint any U.S. envoys. And when you stop and think about what the Secretary of State position is, you're the chief diplomat. You're the top negotiator. You're the guy. So when a special envoy is appointed for a certain situation, what is happening is basically somebody else is being brought in to run the show on that one issue. Now that can be beneficial if you have a lot of plates that you're balancing and one thing needs a lot of attention. I think it probably makes sense to appoint an envoy, but if that envoy becomes the point man, which it seems to be the case with Steve Witkoff, I definitely can see why that would be frustrating from the position of the Secretary of State. So putting all that kind of drama, which may or may not even be real, aside, what's interesting is that Wickoff has been leveraging his relationships in the Middle East to better position himself to make deals with Russia, because the crux of this whole situation with Russia is really going to be Iran. It seems like Iran is going to be a major point of negotiation. There's a lot of news right now. I mean, I know like Fox News and the State Department's given a briefing right now, or they just were talking about that. And they were saying they're going to do maximum pressure on Iran. They're going to go full tilt sanctions. Trump just said in a press conference that he wanted to potentially have a peace with Iran, but if they didn't agree to that, then there was going to be maybe something really bad happening. So hinting at something backfiring or maybe an attack. When we know, of course, that Israel is eager, Netanyahu is eager to do that. So it seems to me that we're going to have to talk about Iran. But before we get there, let's talk about what's happening in Russia. What was the Russian gas pipeline facility destroyed by Kiev? The strike violates the ceasefire deal and negates the possibility of quickly restoring service to the EU, according to Moscow. So, again, the agreement that was signed earlier this week in Riyadh was all about not attacking energy infrastructure and eventually lifting sanctions. And then, of course, we get an attack on an energy infrastructure right around Kursk. So there's going to be an attack. There's an attack on Kursk, an attack on Belgorod, and then an attack on Sutska. And I'll show you on a map what this all looks like. And if I can get the border to show up, this is really bad. Let's see if we can get rid of the terrain. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So Russia's over here on the right. Ukraine is over here on the left. Let me give you your bearings. Zoom out. Okay. So right here, where that red dot is, that is Sutska. I think I'm saying that right. So that's where this natural gas facility is, and Russia's saying it's basically destroyed. Kursk is right here. So this is the Kursk region, right? And then Belgorod is, I believe, right here. So you have right here. So Kursk and Belgorod are right next to each other. So you have the Belgorod region right here. You have Kursk. I'm sorry about that. You have Kursk up here. And then you have this Sutska plant right here. So 3 separate locations that were hit. And one of them, the most significant, it seems, being this natural gas pipeline facility. So let's jump back to that story. Ukraine has destroyed a key border energy facility in Kursk region. The fact that they never say the Kursk region always trips me up with the Russian media. They just say in Kursk region. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the Sutsa gas metering station was part of a major pipeline which for decades had delivered fuel to EU customers. Here's what happened and the possible consequences of the attack. Ukraine finishes off Sutsa station. According to the report by the Russian military, Ukrainian forces used U.S.-made HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems to strike the Sutsa gas pipeline facility on Friday, causing a blaze. The Defense Ministry in Moscow claimed that the metering station is no longer operational. Last week, Moscow accused Kiev of sabotaging the same site using planted explosives. Ukrainian forces seized the station last August as part of their incursion into the Kursk region, but have been largely pushed out over the recent weeks. The Russian military said the Ukrainians had damaged the station during their retreat as they could no longer use it for military logistics. So basically, they planted explosives, damaged it, retreat. Russia retakes control of the station, and then today, I guess, they launched this HIMARS attack using the HIMARS weapon system and completely destroyed the facility. And that's significant because this is a facility, a metering station that services the EU, meaning the pipeline that runs from Russia down into Europe relies on this metering station. And it's a very strange thing for the Europeans to do because they are very dependent on this pipeline. Well, I guess technically it's the Ukrainians, but let's be honest, who's actually pulling the strings here? And that brings us to this story. The EU rejects U.S.-mediated Black Sea ceasefire deal. The bloc still hopes to maximize pressure on Moscow, a European Commission spokesperson has told the Financial Times. The EU will not fulfill Russia's demand to lift sanctions on the country's main agricultural bank as part of the Black Sea ceasefire initiative discussed between Moscow and Washington. European Commission Foreign Affairs spokeswoman Anita Hipper has said. During the talks between Russia and U.S. experts in Riyadh on Monday, the sides agreed to move towards reviving the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which, according to the Kremlin, should include the removal of Western restrictions against Russian agricultural bank and other financial institutions involved in international sale of food and fertilizers. The maritime ceasefire is seen by Moscow and Washington as a step towards settling the Ukraine conflict. In her interview with the Financial Times on Wednesday, Hipper insisted that the end of the Russian unprovoked and unjustified aggression in Ukraine and unconditional withdrawal of all Russian military forces from the entire territory of Ukraine would be one of the main preconditions to amend or lift sanctions. The EU's main focus remains to maximize pressure in Russia using all tools available, including sanctions, to diminish Russia's ability to wage its war against Ukraine, she insisted. U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed on Tuesday that his administration is considering lifting some curbs against Moscow, saying that there are about 5 or 6 conditions. We are looking at all of them. Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky later claimed that Kiev did not agree to the maritime truce due to it representing a weakening of positions and a weakening of sanctions against Russia. The Black Sea Grain Initiative, originally brokered in July 2022 by the UN and Turkey, envisioned the safe passage of Ukrainian agricultural products in exchange for the West lifting its restrictions on Russian grain and fertilizer exports. Moscow withdrew from the deal a year later, citing the West's failure to uphold its obligations. So, Russia is expecting the U.S. to fulfill its promise to lift sanctions if we're going to have this ceasefire. And then, of course, the EU and Ukraine don't like the idea of a ceasefire. They want to keep fighting. They think that, let's just keep going until every last man is dead. And everyone else understands that if they keep fighting, they're just all going to die. And I think they're all prepared to die. And that is a question. When you're facing an existential situation, attitude like that, you really have to stop and say, what is going on here? Because as Adam Boehler, the U.S. Special Envoy to hostage negotiations, told Jake Tapper on CNN, and Steve Witkoff told Tucker Carlson during his interview last weekend with them, they came to realize during their discussions with Hamas that Hamas does not want to die. Hamas are not they're not that kind of ideologue. They're not suicidal, and that means something. That means that they are at least somewhat reasonable. They can be reasoned with. You just have to figure out what their motives are. These people in Kiev do seem suicidal, and whether they're being driven by people in London, Paris, and DC or not, Brussels as well, remains to be seen, but that certainly seems to be the case. And that brings us to this story. I love how I'm just like naturally segueing to all this. Feels very, very natural. And yeah, we're using RT because RT is hitting all the right headlines. I've looked at every single other outlet, and they're still focused on all the political nonsense, man. Like they want to talk about like the drama in Trump's cabinet as opposed to the stuff that the activities and the events that are actually happening around the world. And I just don't have time for that. It's just it's so damn tiresome. So anyway, UK and France UK and France key to Kiev's latest attack on Russian energy infrastructure, Moscow. British specialists set coordinates for a Ukrainian missile system that struck a gas metering station, the foreign ministry has said. France and the UK actively aided Kiev in a strike on the Sutsa pipeline infrastructure in Russia's Kursk region on Friday. Foreign ministry spokeswoman Maria Zarakova has told journalists. Earlier, the Russian Defense Ministry said that a metering facility was de facto destroyed in the Ukrainian HIMARS attack. We have reason to believe that targeting and navigation were facilitated through French satellites and British specialists input target coordinates and launched the missiles, Zarakova said, commenting on the strike. The command came from London, she said, branding the attack part of a Ukrainian terror campaign targeting Russian energy infrastructure. The spokeswoman added that such actions demonstrate that Kiev is impossible to negotiate with. What is happening here? Although Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky publicly supported a temporary suspension of strikes on energy infrastructure agreed by Moscow and Washington, he did nothing to observe it, according to Zarakova. So yeah, you have France and UK are going full tilt. If anyone who's been on X today has probably seen the eye rolling posts, like I'm rolling my eyes whenever I see this, these large influencer accounts who are basically saying, hey, America, we're going to war with Russia. Are you coming with us or not? And my answer is no, dude. Good luck. And I guess I'll see you on the other side, because y'all are not going to survive that. There's no way that the Brits and the French are going to be able to take on Russia. That's laugh out loud funny. Next headline is Italy pours cold water on pro-Ukraine coalition of the willing. Europe, and this is our girl Meloni, and I think I said on the first episode of this show 2 weeks ago that she is definitely our girl. There's no doubt in my mind. She's Sovereign Alliance. We love Meloni. She had that weird love triangle storyline with Elon and Trump back in December, and that was after she had arrested some Mossad agents in Milan who were working with a private security firm in Milan who were former Italian intelligence. They had hacked into the Italian intelligence servers and tried to extract data that was material that would have been blackmail material. They were targeting blackmail material for Putin's inner circle. And you got to ask yourself, why is Mossad after blackmail material for Putin? Isn't Israel fighting Hamas? Yeah. And that's why one of the big reasons I've been saying, although I was saying last summer that I thought Israel and Russia were going to find themselves toe to toe. Anyway, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has ruled out the participation of her country's troops in a military force that the UK and France want to be deployed in Ukraine in the event of a peace deal with Russia is reached. I want to read that again because that is, again, funny. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has ruled out the participation of her country's troops in a military force that the UK and France want to be deployed to Ukraine in the event that a peace deal with Russia is reached. So if Russia and the US broker a deal regarding Ukraine, so Russia, Ukraine, the US broker a peace deal, Britain and Ukraine are like want to deploy a European military to go fight Russia. And I think it would be very poetic and apropos for the United States and Russia to fight a war, or at least a narrative war, because I don't want to see people die, needlessly die, if they were to fight Britain and France. Because, remember, in World War I and World War II, the allies, the four main allies in World War I and World War II were Britain, France, the US, and Russia. So now you have the allies from both world wars, the four main players on the allied side, now fighting each other, having their own little civil war, right? And the rules-based international order, which is the globalist hegemony, was basically established by three of those countries. they basically brought China in to counterbalance Russia, and because they didn't trust Russia, because you had the Cold War, you had the Soviets, but Russia, got a seat at most of the table, at all the tables, because they helped win the wars. So interesting. In early March, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron said that their nations were ready to lead a coalition of the willing, pro-Ukrainian European countries to support Kiev with troops and aircraft. The announcement followed the launch of bilateral talks between Moscow and Washington to settle the ongoing conflict, to which the EU and UK were not invited. Sorry. After a summit of Kiev's backers in Paris on Thursday, which was attended by Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky, Meloni reiterated that no national participation in a possible military force on the ground is planned by the authorities in Rome. According to a statement published by the Italian Prime Minister's office, she also stressed the importance of continuing to work with the U.S. to stop the conflict and achieve peace between Moscow and Kiev. She hoped for the involvement of an American delegation at the next coordination meeting of Ukraine's European allies, the statement read. In her interview with the Financial Times on Friday, Meloni stressed that it is childish to make Italy choose between the U.S. and the EU. But Meloni, if we're being honest, like, if you're picking between those two boyfriends, let's go with the winner. I mean, there really isn't a choice at all. It's like you could either have Donald Trump or you could have these two clowns right here. I mean, these guys are absolute clowns. And that brings us to the next story. France and UK rebrand possible military deployment in Ukraine. To Ukraine, France and Britain will continue to push for a deployment of a military contingent to Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron has said a plan by Paris and London to send troops to Ukraine in case of a peace deal with Russia has been rejected already by several EU members, while a shift in Western European thinking was reported by Reuters, citing multiple sources. Kiev has been pushing for a deployment of troops as a security guarantee, including combat troops ready to fight. Then it just goes on to explain the coalition of the willing. And remember, the octopus at the center of this octopus, which I believe probably goes through goes through Tel Aviv, is the city of London. At the end of this whole rainbow is the city of London. It's the same enemy that America has been, the American people have been fighting for the past, 270 years, 250 years, since 1776. And, are they actually British? Are these cockroaches in London actually British? Well, they were once Venetian. They were once Iranian. They've kind of been many things. They've traveled all over the world, and they've reinvented themselves in many different societies over the years. But I would say where they really cut their teeth was when they were in Venice, and they were the banking cabal of Venice, and they had a real stranglehold on trade, and were very, very powerful. And that's also, by the way, this is, we're talking like 1,000 years ago, and that's also where they really cultivated the idea of espionage, and it was all corporate espionage, but getting lawyers basically to go and do your dirty work for you. And lawyers make ideal spies because they know the ins and outs of the law. They know where the boundary is. They know where the line is, when to cross it, how to cross it, and how to cover your tracks. So, the bankers of Venice, now the bankers of London, and their origin story really is Phoenicia from the Bible. But even before that, Iran. So interesting. It all kind of comes full circle, doesn't it? Let's see. EU rejects U.S. mediated Black Sea ceasefire deal. The bloc still hopes to maximize pressure on Moscow. A European Commission spokesperson has told the Financial Times. This is all, kind of repeats. We're not going to repeat that. Let's see. So I think that might get us out of Ukraine, but I think we pretty much have beaten that dead horse. It's like, everyone kind of understands what's going on with Ukraine. Ukraine is the U.S. and Russia are trying to make peace and everyone else is trying to make war. Well, everyone else, France and Britain are trying to make war. So let's see. Let's go to, shall we pivot to the Middle East? Let's go and pivot to the Middle East. I think that's kind of the big story. It's like the Middle East and Ukraine, man. It's almost like Ukraine and the Middle East are directly connected. I wonder who would have thought that. Uh-oh. We're gonna Times of Israel. Let's see if it breaks the computer this time. All right. So this is from today, and I'm kind of just going back like from the most recent article that I found published, and we're just kind of like going back, as opposed to starting on like Monday and trying to catch up, because if we run out of time, I'd rather not get to stories from Monday, because, some of those situations have changed since then. Netanyahu said to task Mossad with finding countries to house Gazans. With Trump's focus elsewhere, report says Israel has reached out to Sudan, Somalia, Indonesia, and other nations about taking in Palestinians, but the outreach has yet to bear fruit. Remember last week, I shared the story from some Israeli press that said Trump had already agreed to the deal with Egypt. He had already accepted the deal. White House hasn't confirmed it. Nobody has asked about it. Nobody's talked about it. No other outlets have reported on it. Although now we're definitely getting that narrative seeded that this Egyptian plan is going to be the plan that is accepted. So maybe we just got the news early. I don't know. Some time travel and stuff. Who knows? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has directed the Mossad intelligence agency to identify countries that would be willing to take in large numbers of displaced Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, according to a report Friday. While several countries have taken in small numbers of sick Palestinians, mainly children, for treatment, no country to date has agreed to host a significant number of Gazans, who themselves appear uninterested in leaving in mass. Nonetheless, Israel is seeking to advance the removal of Palestinians from Gaza, with some of the biggest proponents being Netanyahu's far-right coalition partners Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. Color me shocked. It's our two friends, the two Goon brothers, man. Those guys are bad news bears. The Israeli effort received a tailwind from U.S. President Donald Trump, who last month announced, let me just make sure I am sharing my screen, who last month announced, yep, I sure am, announced his plan for the U.S. to take over Gaza and relocate the entire population of 2 million people. He has since softened the half-baked proposal, clarifying that no Palestinians will be forcibly evicted and denying that the relocation plan would amount to ethnic cleansing. Israel has also insisted that Gazans would not be forced to leave, but officials have not spelled out how such voluntary immigration could be incentivized and what should happen if it were unsuccessful. According to the Axios news site, the U.S. has not been actively working to advance Trump's plan, with Mideast envoy Steve Witkoff focused instead on restoring the ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. Imagine that. So no efforts have been made to actually advance the plan that Trump put forth on February 5th when Netanyahu was sitting with him in the Oval Office. Man, who saw that coming? Israel has tried to fill the vacuum, holding talks with the conflict-plagued East African countries of Somalia and South Sudan, along with Indonesia and other countries, about them taking in Palestinians, Axios reported, citing 2 Israeli officials and a former U.S. official. Those talks have yet to bear fruit. And I think that Axios story, that's Barak Ravid. And I have a high opinion of Barak Ravid in his reporting. Donald Trump certainly has a high opinion of him. He's like the guy that Trump always goes to whenever he wants to deploy a narrative in Israel. So it's worth noting that previous reports have named Syria, Sudan, and the breakaway Somali region of Somaliland as potential destinations for relocating Gazans that the U.S. and Israel are eyeing. So they're talking about sending these Palestinians to Africa now. Like, that's where Netanyahu wants to send them. And just so we're clear, let's go back to the map. We're going to zoom out. We're going to leave We're going to leave the Slavic region of Eastern Europe. We're going to go across the Black Sea, past Turkey, past Arabia, the Middle East, and we are down here in the Eastern Horn of Africa. So they're talking about Sudan. They're talking about Somalia. They're talking about the breakaway region of Somaliland, which I believe is right here. It's this region, the western portion of Somalia. I think they're also talking about South Sudan is what they mentioned. So, I mean, you're going to pick these people up, force them to leave here, and you're going to send them all the way down to potentially here. I mean, imagine like, just think about like Black Hawk Down, like Mogadishu. It's like, we're going to save these people from Gaza and we're going to send them to Mogadishu. Oh my God. It's like a comedy routine. It's literally like a comedy routine. All right, but I digress. Let's get back to the story. I think that's about the story. The Palestinian Authority, I wouldn't know. Let's hear from the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority and the Arab world. Wait, let's go back. Bam. The Palestinian Authority and the Arab world has pushed back vehemently against efforts to relocate Gazans, arguing that Palestinians should be allowed to remain in the Strip and that moving them elsewhere will simply spur more conflict and extremism elsewhere. I completely agree with that. If you forcibly remove these people from Gaza and send them anywhere, I mean, it's not just the Gazans you have to worry about. It's people in the West Bank, the Palestinians, the West Bank. It's the Palestinians in Jordan, because Jordan is two-thirds of the population of Jordan are displaced Palestinians, people who have left Palestine have been forced out of Palestine since 1948. Then you got to think about Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have to think about the people in Syria who are going to be angry about that. You have to think about the militants in Yemen, and then of course you have to think about the very young population of Saudi Arabia, where I think it's like 70% of their population is under the age of 30. I think that's accurate, or at least those were the numbers like 5 years ago. So maybe they're in their 30s now. But most of the people, the overwhelming majority of Saudi Arabia are like under the age of 35, and they are not going to be down with watching their brethren get kicked out, because they could be next. Israel and the U.S. have argued that Gaza is not a safe place to live after nearly a year and a half of Israeli bombardment targeting Hamas, and that Palestinians should be given the opportunity to move elsewhere. But Israel's refusal to publicly commit to allowing Palestinians who leave the ability to return has led to further questioning of its motives. I mean, frankly, even if Israel says, yes, they can come back, is anybody going to believe them? Like the Gazans certainly aren't. So I don't think it even matters if they give them their word. Their word means nothing to them. Trump had first revealed his relocation proposal as Netanyahu visited the White House amid the now defunct ceasefire and hostage release deal that was mediated by the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt. The agreement halted 15 months of war in Gaza that began on October 7th. Yeah, that's just going into the history. All right, let's go to the next. We're going to skip that one and maybe come back. Let's go to, before I get to Iran. Sorry, guys. There is a story that I'm looking for, a specific story I'm looking for. Well, let's just do this story. This story is certainly relevant since we're talking about Palestine. Mike Huckabee, Trump's pick for Israel ambassador, tries to distance himself from past Palestinian rhetoric. Mike Huckabee, President Donald Trump's nominee for U.S. ambassador to Israel, attempted to distance himself Tuesday from his past controversial statements about the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian people, pledging on Capitol Hill to carry out the president's priorities, not mine. I am not here to articulate or defend my own views or policies, but to present myself as one who will respect and represent the president, whose overwhelming election by the people will hopefully give me the honor of serving as ambassador to the state of Israel, Huckabee said in his opening statement. Trump nominated Huckabee, a well-known. Yeah, Trump. This is from Wednesday. Trump nominated Huckabee, a well-known evangelical Christian and vehement supporter of Israel, to take on the critical post in Jerusalem days after he won the re-election on a campaign promise to end the now 17-month war in Gaza. But after a brief ceasefire, U.S. and Arab mediators are now struggling to get a ceasefire deal back on track after Israeli forces resumed the war last week with a surprise wave of deadly airstrikes. So we have the Israel breaking the ceasefire with Hamas, and then we have Ukraine subverting the ceasefire between Trump and Putin. I mean, the parallels there are right in your face. While Republican senators applauded Huckabee's staunch support for America's closest ally, Israel, Democrats questioned his past rhetoric about Palestinians deemed extreme by even some pro-Israel groups and contradicting long-standing U.S. policy in the region. The former Arkansas governor acknowledged his past support for Israel's right to annex the West Bank and incorporate its Palestinian population into Israel, but said it would not be his prerogative to carry out that policy. If confirmed, it will be my responsibility to carry out the president's priorities, not mine, Huckabee said in response to Democrat Senator Jeff Merkley's questions. Huckabee, a one-time presidential hopeful, was also repeatedly backed referring to the West Bank by its biblical name of Judea and Samaria, a term that right-wing Israeli politicians and activists have thus far fruitlessly pushed the U.S. to accept. He did not give a clear answer to whether he still stands by that when pushed by Senator Chris Van Hollen. Most notably, Huckabee has long been opposed to the idea of a two-state solution between Israel and Palestinian people. In an interview last year, he went even further, saying that he doesn't even believe in referring to the Arab descendants of people who lived in British-controlled Palestine as Palestinians. And I actually pointed that out when he was nominated by Trump, that even just like last year, he did make that statement in an interview where he said he said Palestine isn't even a real thing. It's not even a real place. Like, they aren't even real people. So, which is why I thought that Trump appointing him was something more than just, and Mike Huckabee seems like a nice guy. Like, I don't have anything against Mike Huckabee, but his position on this one issue is very extreme. And, considering he's supposed to be like the envoy to Israel, that's just, it puts Israel in a tough spot by appointing him as ambassador. I'll just say that. All right, so we're going to pivot off that story because I think it's pretty clear. He's trying to distance himself from things that he said just a year ago, but he's been saying his entire life. And yeah, and it's pretty obvious why. Let me pull up this Axios article because I was looking for the specific article I'm looking for is this is the one I'm looking for. Here we go. From Barack Ravid. So this is from yesterday. U.S. gave Hamas new Gaza ceasefire and hostage release proposal. The U.S. gave Hamas a new proposal through Qatari mediators in an effort to release American hostage Eden Alexander and break the stalemate in the Gaza ceasefire negotiations, one U.S. official and one Israeli official said. Why it matters. It isn't clear if Hamas will accept the proposal that hinges on releasing Alexander in exchange for a statement, in return for a statement by President Trump calling for calm in Gaza and resuming negotiations over a broader ceasefire deal. There is no deal yet, a U.S. official said. Driving the news, let's see. U.S. and Israeli officials said that in recent days after Israeli, this is the translation. Like, this must be written. I'm guessing that Barack Ravid wrote this in Hebrew and then an AI translated it, and the translation is really sloppy. After Israel resumed the war in Gaza, the negotiations over a new hostage release and ceasefire deal stalled. In the meantime, Israel expanded its military operation in Gaza, including ground incursions in several parts of the enclave. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu threatened on Wednesday that if Hamas continued to refuse to release hostages, Israel is going to occupy more parts of Gaza. The U.S. has put significant pressure on both Egypt and Qatar over the past few days to to press Hamas to agree to release some hostages, which will restore the ceasefire and buy more time for negotiations, U.S. and Israeli officials said. A few days ago, Egyptian officials met Hamas representatives in Cairo to discuss a new proposal in an effort to break the logjam in the talks. And Israeli officials said the proposal was very similar to the one presented by Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff 2 weeks ago, which Hamas didn't accept. The Egyptians threatened to deport Hamas prisoners who were released by Israel as part of the Gaza ceasefire and have been staying in Cairo since if the group doesn't agree to release more hostages. U.S. and Israeli officials said Hamas leaders outside of Gaza were willing to agree to the Egyptian proposal, but Hamas military leader in Gaza, Mohammed Sinwar, rejected it. On Wednesday, Witkoff spoke to the Qatari prime minister in an effort to develop another formula. The two reached a proposal that includes the release of Alexander in return for more favorable statement from Trump that would lead to a temporary ceasefire for a few days and an immediate resumption of talks on a broader deal, U.S. and Israeli officials said. Yeah, and so Witkoff did an interview with Tucker that was released, I think, last Friday. It was a great interview. I encourage people to go look for it. I sent it to Chris Paul. I sent it to John. I sent it to a few of the Badlands guys and told them to listen to it because it just provides like another layer of like understanding if you're interested in what's going on there. And the thing that really stuck out to me with the interview, I won't play clips from it because I think that'll just take longer than me explaining it, was Witkoff talking about the Qataris. And he's talking about how important the Qataris have been to all this. Talking about how the Qataris want to be they want to become the mediators of the world. They want to become the guys who mediate disputes between countries, between groups. I've talked about how the Saudis want to become that. Really, what MBS wants to become is he wants to become kind of like the convention center of the world. He wants to become the place where the crossroads where the world meets. And obviously, I think being the broker of peace deals and the broker of parties in conflict is a big part of establishing that as your establishing yourself as the forum to come do that. The Qataris, I think, want to become like the mediators. They want to be the actual boots on the ground who go and resolve the thing. And who I'm referring to, of course, is Sheikh Tamim al Tani, is that he's Tani, I think is how you say his name. His family has ruled Qatar since 1700, so they've ruled Qatar for over 300 years. And Trump has talked about how him and Tamim have been friends for a very, very long time. Witkoff in the interview talked about how him and Tamim and the other Qatari leaders have been friends for a very long time. It seems like there's a good evil twin in Qatar, and that Witkoff and Trump are friends with the good twin, and they're trying to bring that side out. And I'd be earnestly working to try to bring peace to the region. One of the things that Witkoff said, and I actually wish I did have this part of the clip played up. This is a really, really important point. I'm going to say this, and then we'll play an ad and keep talking. The real problem for the Qatar, for all of the rich Gulf state princes, and we're talking about thousands of people, thousands of these princes in Saudi, thousands in the UAE, at least hundreds of them probably, if not thousands in Qatar. But not just them, like the businessmen, like the corporations, the investors worldwide. The problem for all these people is that when it comes to construction, and I know a little bit about this because I do that in my professional life. Financing a building requires you have to get insurance on the construction process. You have to get insurance on the building once it's built. And there aren't any insurance companies that will insure the construction process in the Middle East right now because of the conditions of the situation over there. And so what that means is that if you're somebody who wants to build a building, you have to pay all cash. And for people who understand what that means you can't leverage it. You can't go get financing, put a little bit of your money down and then finance the rest of it and then, pay it off over time. And if you've read the books that Donald Trump's been involved in, either he's authored or he's co-authored over the years, over his lifetime, That is not how you build wealth. That's not how you take money and turn it into more money. You finance and leverage stuff so that you can keep your cash available for other projects. If you have to take all of your cash and invest it in one project at a time, that's very, very demanding of your resources, and you can't spread out your efforts and have multiple lines in the water at once. And so bringing peace to the Middle East isn't just about resolving these ancient religious rivalries or ancient tribal rivalries or these political disputes. It's also about, if you want to build stuff, if you want to make things, if you want to build a civilization, you have to be able to finance this stuff. And financing it means you have to be able to insure the loan. You have to be able to insure the construction process. And the insurance companies are not going to do that if there is a war zone going on. That's just the way it is. So that puts a very, very strong impediment, imperative and motive on the Qataris, on the Emiratis, on the Saudis, on even the Israelis. Anyone who wants to make money in the Middle East, you have to go fix the problems there first. Otherwise, you can't really make things happen. Those 2 Trump towers they announced last year, they announced one in, I think it was one in Jeddah and one in Riyadh, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was one in Jeddah and one in Riyadh. I mean, Trump's not paying for those with cash. Like, that's not how Trump operates. He's financing those. So if he wants to get those financed, that means he's got to get them insured. And if he wants to get them insured, he has to get peace in the Middle East. And that's what I've been saying the whole time, is that you're not going to get that stuff done without peace. All right. So let's, before we keep reading, let's do an ad read. What are we doing, Scotty? Scotty 7688 is throwing up the sirens. What's going on, Scotty? You're throwing sirens up? Or are you just fooling around? That's cool. That's cool, man. That's cool, homie. You can fool around in here. We're not going to judge you. All right, let's play an ad. This is from our friends at Rise Attire. Where is the video? Stand by for processing. I haven't froze, everybody. I'm just, for some reason, this thing is not it's not playing. Hold on. We're going to do it another way. We're going to do a workaround. Here's the workaround.
By now, you've probably seen the new collab between Rise and Badlands Media, but I'll tell you what you haven't seen yet: the end of Clown World as we know it. But have no fear. Introducing the latest addition to the Badlands INTL lineup, the sequel to the best-selling Sci-War series. We've been conditioned by these clowns to accept their circus. But it's time to unwind that and strike them out the history books. The future belongs to the real, and we've got it in droves. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/rise for the full line of premium and direct-to-garment streetwear. Made to order right here in the good old US of A, the heart of the resistance. The fall of Clown World is upon us, patriots. Let's make it official.
That is a great ad, and I see Rise Attire is actually in the chat right now. So welcome, Rise Attire. Welcome, guys. Great seeing y'all, Gart. Always fun hanging out with y'all. Great. Now did I lose my spot? So I think we might be able to pivot. Wait, let's go back and see. Okay, so Wickoff spoke to the Qatari prime minister in an effort to develop another formula. The two reached a proposal that includes the release of Alexander in return for favorable statement from Trump that would lead to a temporary ceasefire for a few days and an immediate resumption of talks on a broader deal, U.S. and Israeli officials said. And we're going to go over an hour today because we didn't get to do any coverage this entire week. So I'm not going to go for very long, but I'm just going to hit a few more stories. On Wednesday, Wickoff briefed Israeli Minister for Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer about the new proposal he developed with the Qataris. What to watch: Qatari and Egyptian officials met Hamas representatives in Doha on Thursday and discussed the different proposals Israeli and U.S. officials said. An Israeli official said the new U.S.-Qatari proposal is more than an idea that isn't fully clear or fully developed. He said that the Qataris presented the proposal to Hamas as a gesture to the U.S. that could go a long way with Trump and would allow him to press Israel for a broader deal. But it is not clear if Hamas would agree to release Alexander only for a statement from Trump and without getting a ceasefire commitment or a release of prisoners' return. And that's from 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So, I mean, look, Adam Bowler said, what was it, 3 weeks ago when he went on Tapper's show, he said that he thought that a deal was a few weeks away. He said, I think that within the course of a few weeks, we probably are going to be able to get a deal. I mean, it looks like without external influence, like that's exactly what we have in front of us, is that a deal is coming together. Now, here are the things that are working against them. There are obviously forces at work here that are operating against them. And let me see if I'm going to probably get my mind map here, as I pulled some of these headlines earlier, because these are probably not going to dig into, but I can at least just show you the headlines. Well, all right. I grouped all these together to get them in one shot. I can pull them all apart. Okay, so the big news is that Itamar Ben-Gvir is back. I think I covered that last week. I did cover that last week. Itamar Ben-Gvir has rejoined Netanyahu's coalition. That's the Jewish Power Party, has come back. They brought the 5 people who had won the election and taken their seats back, meaning that Netanyahu has a 68-seat majority. And that means that Netanyahu was able to do this judicial overhaul bill. And this is probably something that if anyone who's been following the Israel stuff for the past year or two knows, that there have been big protests against Netanyahu for the past couple years because he's been trying to push this judicial overhaul bill. So all week the vote happened Wednesday night, Thursday night. You know, they're several hours ahead of us, so it's hard to know. But it got announced, I think, Thursday night here in the U.S. and it passed. But in the days leading up to it, you had a bunch of people coming out and saying some pretty the rhetoric got pretty heated. And one of the people speaking was Benny Gantz. Benny Gantz, of course, is former war cabinet member. This is Benny Gantz right here. So, you know, he was in the 3-man war cabinet after October 7th. And he shows up to the Knesset and gives a speech and says he resigned in June of last year because he said that he didn't see like any clear goal or objective. He's like, we're just in Gaza, just killing people, and there doesn't seem to be like an exit plan or a strategy or anything like that. So instead, he gives a speech. He says, we're on the brink of civil war. This is actually the same thing that the former retired Israeli Supreme Court chief said last week. He said that he thinks that Israel is headed towards a civil war. Gantz was trying to convince Levin. Levin is the deputy prime minister, to abandon this controversial judicial appointments bill. The bill is, there's a lot of weeds in it, but the crux of it is that there's a 9-man panel committee that selects the Supreme Court justices, right? The Supreme Court judges. And I think as it currently stands, 2 of those people come from the Israel Bar Association. So they're like, I guess they're considered objective or whatever. They're not from like a political party. The other members are made up of the opposition party and the majority ruling coalition. So the 68 seats out of the 100 seats in the Knesset, they have some of those seats, and then the other seats come from. So that what would the breakdown be? I'm not sure exactly what the breakdown is, but basically those 2 guys who are from the bar, they kind of become like the tie-breaking vote. And I guess the thought is that they like balance things out, that they represent the lawyers of Israel, and that they aren't coming at it from a political angle. They're coming at it from the law fraternity or whatever. So the idea now is you're going to kick those guys out and you're going to replace them with the majority party. Now, the original bill that Netanyahu introduced like a year or 2 ago was, not only are you going to kick out those 2 seats, you're also going to kick out the opposition party. The opposition party would be the 32 seats that make up that aren't part of the coalition. And just all 9 people on the committee are just going to be part of the coalition, which just means anyone that the prime minister picks to be a judge automatically becomes a judge, and there doesn't really have to be a consensus, and it removes kind of the checks and balances system. But now they don't have the exact same checks and balances that we have, because they're a parliamentary European model, and we are the federalist model, but the constitutional republic. But that's the crux of it. And the bill that actually ends up getting passed last night or the other night, I think gave 1 more seat to the opposition, but the ruling majority, or the ruling coalition, they get like 3 more seats. So they go from having, I guess, 4 seats to having like 6. So 6 and 3, 6 and something like that. Point is that it isn't the same as the ruling coalition controlling all 9 seats, but it might as well be. It's like they have such a majority on this committee that Netanyahu is going to be able to just load the Supreme Court with yes men, with guys who are loyal to him. And you got to think that the concern is that he is going to load the Supreme Court not only with judges that are going to ultimately let him off because he's facing these procedures. He's facing these criminal indictments against him. But the concern is that, more importantly, they're going to appoint judges that are radical, like these people that he has made friends with. Let me show you this chart. This chart's going to be important for y'all to see. Right. I know I have this chart. This chart I have shows the breakdown of like the seats in the Knesset, and it would be, here it is. All right, so if you're not looking at the screen, it would help if you did look at the screen. This guy, David Stern, great presentation on the Kahanists and the extremism in the Knesset that has emerged over the past couple of years. And the long and short of it is this: as he explains right here, he kind of gives them different labels to kind of help you understand it. But the yellow and the green are kind of like what we would consider, the communists, the socialists, the liberals, kind of like the let's just hug it out guys and get along. And they have very, very marginal influence in the Knesset. They have just a couple seats each, right? The blue are the Zionists. Like that's the Zionist coalition. It's the majority of the Knesset. It's like 60% of the Knesset, 50 or 60%. But within that blue, you have, a huge spectrum of people. Like you have moderates, you have the Likud, which would be the Netanyahu party. And then you have like Zionists that would be considered more left wing. So you would have like left wing Zionists, you'd have moderate Zionists, which would be like Benny Gantz, and then you have the Likud, which is like Yoav Gallant and Netanyahu. Now the red down here, these are the religious extremists. These are the Kahanists. These are the guys who believe in like Jewish supremacy and want to kick everyone out of Israel, including Christians, and just want like a Jewish ethno state, like a Jewish supremacy worldview, right? So what Netanyahu has done is he has lost the support of the center of this blue. He's basically swapped out, if you could imagine this red, the same shape, and like being carved out of this blue and like swapping those two. So that red is now in the blue and the blue is now in the red. That's what Netanyahu's done, because he lost the support of the moderates. He never had the support of these guys down here, but he had the support of the people in the blue, and he's lost that. And so out of desperation, in order to maintain the 60 seat support, he had to bring in the red. And so the concern now is that the judges that they're going to appoint are going to be people from this red region. And if you put people like that on the Supreme Court, I mean, imagine putting people on the Supreme Court in America who were like literally communists, right? Who had like a very specific hardcore worldview. Here's a breakdown. This is a better breakdown of like what I'm talking about here. So even within the red, it's like you have people who are hardcore, like Jewish supremacists, and then you have people who are less extreme, right? And then in the blue, you have the light blue, the dark blue. He did a really, really great job with that video. I would encourage people to watch that. David Stern is his name, if I recall correctly. But anyway, so that's when Benny Gantz says we're looking at civil war, that's why they're saying that, is because you have a situation where now this isn't going to go into effect, I think, until after the 2026 election, which is next fall. So I don't think they would be seated until January 2027. So it's not immediate. Like this isn't going to go into effect for probably 2 years, or, going on 2 years. But 2 years comes and goes real quickly. So that's why there's a big freak out in Israel right now. Now, to that point, this story is from the Times of Israel. Report shows rise in attacks on Christians in Israel, but a willingness to tackle issues. Second annual Rossing Center report documents 111 anti-Christian incidents in 2024. Accompanying survey finds almost half of Christians under the age of 30 want to immigrate from Israel, meaning they want to leave Israel. So according to the survey, 50% of Christians under the age of 30 don't feel safe in Israel anymore and want to leave. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And then I could show you the same articles that I've shown on my shows for the past year and a half. And that would be these articles right here, which are. So, and this is the article from December 2022, which shows Netanyahu canceling the law that was banning even more radical people than I was showing in that chart over there, and like bringing these radicals into the Knesset. This is the deal he made with the devil. There's Itamar Ben-Gvir. He's one of these people who has like the Jewish supremacy worldview. And this article right here is April 2024. The guy on the right is Benzi Gopstein. The guy on the left is National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, and the headline is Jewish extremists leader. The quote, Christians are blood-sucking vampires who should be expelled from Israel. And the sub-heading is Benzi Gopstein, head of Lahava. Lahava is the Kahanist movement, political faction. Calls to ban Christmas in the Holy Land. Let us remove the vampires before they once again drink our blood. And this picture was taken because Binzi Gopstein said this stuff back in 2015. It was basically considered an incitement to violence. He said it in an interview, I think, with Slate magazine. And the Israeli authorities arrested him, charged him with incitement to violence, and he didn't go to trial until early 2024. So he finally, after 9 years, went to trial, and his defense attorney was this guy. Itamar Ben-Gvir, like the national security minister, actually sat in there and defended him in court as his defense attorney. So this is very, very real. This is not just and here's the Slate magazine article. It was published December 24th on Christmas Eve, 2015. You got to love Slate magazine publishing something like this on Christmas Eve. Christmas has no place in the Holy Land. Far-right Israeli leader wants to expel Christians and ban the holiday. And I highlight a few parts. He says, Gopstein, a religious extremist, also known as Binzi, calls the Christian church Jews' deadly enemy for hundreds of years. He laments that the disgust for Christianity has disappeared with the good life of the democratic age. He has publicly insisted that setting fire to Christian churches in Israel is justified. This guy, I mean, he's bad news, man. He's bad news, and he comes from a faction of that culture that's just completely incompatible with Western culture, in my opinion. And everything that Islam is accused of being, this guy actually is, and he's just as bad as ISIS and those other people. So let's hit a few more of these headlines. I don't think we're going to get on to do whatever we can. I'll do this every day. Maybe we'll start doing this every day eventually. So this is from a month ago, but I just pulled this because I think this is relevant. But a month ago, it says Israel's government wants to silence all criticism and will target human rights to do it. A bill intended to restrict NGOs critical of the government brings into question the rule of law and replaces it with the corrupt practices of discrimination. The false claims surrounding the bill are unsurprising, but the silence of the opposition is another sign of a disintegrating democracy. It says the bill's first vote targeting NGOs funded by foreign countries or international organizations passed in the Knesset on Sunday. Only a few opposition lawmakers took the trouble to come out and object. And so this is not the same thing as the bills that Putin passed. So all Putin is passing in Russia is he's just saying if you are an NGO that is foreign funded, you have to publicly disclose who is funding you. That's all the Kremlin legislation says. These bills, I think, are much more aggressive in how they actually want to sanction the NGOs and basically shut them down. And now I'm not a fan of NGOs, but what they have been doing is they've actually been sanctioning newspapers and arresting journalists as well. And it's because it's a socialist government, they don't have the Bill of Rights. They don't have the protections that you have in America. So you can't actually do stuff like that and get away with it, just like in Europe, because they're much more like a European socialist model. I thought this one was interesting. This was from yesterday. Netanyahu flight path to U.S. lengthened due to concerns over the ICC warrant. Israeli ambassador to U.S. Yechiel Leiter says flights to D.C. last month took 13 and a half hours because Prime Minister flew over U.S. military bases in case he required an emergency landing. This is a really, really interesting one. This is from yesterday. Playing down normalization prospects. U.S. analyst says the Saudis feel Israel is looking backwards. And all the rhetoric I've seen out of Riyadh, this is absolutely true, is that the Saudis have, I can actually say now that the Saudis have removed that from the table. They say, we're not going to normalize with Israel now. There's so much has to happen that they don't even want to talk about it anymore. So the idea of Israel and Saudi now normalizing seems pretty much like not going to happen. Something very, very significant would have to change for that to take place. And the reason that they're saying that Israel is basically going backwards and becoming everything that it accuses Iran of being, and targeting and discriminating people who criticize the government. The attacks on the Christians that aren't being prosecuted. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And then we will wrap up with this story because this is significant. This is from Axios. Iran responds to Trump's nuclear talks proposal as U.S. sends bombers to region. So earlier this week, there were some pictures. I think maybe it was 2 days ago. There were pictures of B-2 stealth bombers in at a U.S. airbase in the region, and I'm sorry, it was at Diego Garcia. So Diego Garcia base in the Indian Ocean, and that the U.S. had sent these B-2 stealth bombers to Diego Garcia. It says in recent days, the U.S. military sent several B-2 stealth bombers to Diego Garcia military base. A U.S. official said it was not disconnected from Trump's 2-month deadline. And the reason I start with that is because Colonel McGregor was irate about this, saying, why are we taking pictures of our military bases, showing the weapon systems that we intend to use, and then publishing them, like giving the pictures to, or letting the media take the pictures and then publish them in the newspaper. He's like, you're doing the same thing that Obama was guilty of doing. You're telegraphing your plans, thinking that it's like a threat that's going to deter Iran from doing something. All you're doing is communicating exactly what you're about to do if you were to attack, giving them all of the information they need to prepare for the attack. Plus, that means they're going to harden their defenses. They're going to seek a nuclear weapon. Like, they have the incentive now to seek a nuclear weapon, because if they don't get a nuclear weapon, then you want to bomb them before they get a nuke. So why wouldn't they get a nuke as quickly as possible? And then that threat of being bombed theoretically is eliminated. Iran delivered a formal written response to President Trump's letter proposing new nuclear talks and threatening consequences if a deal is not reached swiftly. Foreign Minister Abbas Arachni said Thursday Trump gave Iran a 2-month deadline to sign a new nuclear deal or face potential military action in his letter sent 3 weeks ago. Iran delivered in response via the Gulf Sultanate of Oman, which duly notified the U.S., a source with knowledge of the issue confirmed to Axios. The Omanis briefed the U.S. on the messages they received from the Iranians and will deliver the Iranian letter to the White House in the coming days, the source said. The source did not offer details on the nature of the Iranian response. The White House didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Iraqi said in a news conference that Iran maintains its position that it won't negotiate directly with the Trump administration so long as Trump's maximum pressure campaign is in place, but is willing to hold indirect talks. Trump and his top advisors have left the door open for talks while using the threat of military force. Let's see. The B-2 bombers can carry huge bunker buster bombs that would be a key element in any possible military action against Iran's underground nuclear facilities. A spokesperson for U.S. Strategic Command confirmed the deployment to Axios and said STRATCOM routinely conducts global operations in coordination with other combatant commands, services, and participating U.S. government agencies to deter, detect, and if necessary, defeat strategic attacks against the United States and its allies. The letter was delivered by envoy Steve Witkoff to UAE Mohammed bin Zayed, with MBZ envoy Anwar Gargash traveling to Tehran to deliver to Iraqi, and then Iraqi then went through Oman. And just to give everyone a geography lesson, this is Oman. Oman is the country between the UAE and Yemen. It's actually a pretty green place. That's like where, like the one place in Arabia you find a lot of lush greenery and like farms and stuff. And as I understand it, it's where it has always enjoyed a fair degree of prosperity. I believe it's where the frankincense, in the story, like the birth of Christ, the 3 kings who came to the manger. The king who brought the frankincense, and his name escapes me, but somebody in the chat probably knows it. He came from Muscat. So he came from Oman. He brought the frankincense, most likely crossed the ocean, and then met up with the other 2 somewhere on like the Silk Road in Iran. The other two probably came from, one of them was probably Persian, and I think the other one was probably from the Far East, like almost like India. But yeah, interesting story, great story. You know, read your Bibles. And let's see if we got any rants. We'll get out of here because I think that's about it. I mean, man, there are so many more stories that I would like to talk about, but I'm trying to keep this show relatively short. So we're going to get in at 90 minutes today. We're going to clock out. Looks like we got a few rants. We got Moonlight Girl gifted 5 subscriptions to Badlands Media. Moonlight Girl, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you for that. And looks like we got a few rants. Deplorable number 1. Bro, you need a co-host. I love your insight on everything geopolitical, but the dead air time kills me. Just a suggestion because this show is great. Yeah, I mean, I will consider that. At the very least, I need maybe a producer, but anyway, I'll take it into consideration. Mama Lou, $10. Thanks, GP. Thanks, Ghost. You are teaching us a lot, and your historical perspective is awesome. Keep up the great work. Let's see. Yeah, guys, hit the thumbs up before you get out of here, and I will check real quick and see if we got any boosts. I think Jessica said that we have been added to the what's going on here? Yeah, there it is. That we've been added to the Badlands boost. Problem is that I don't know if anyone wants to do this show. Like the problem is that there's not really anyone who I think, not that they don't want to do it, but they wouldn't feel comfortable coming on and like talking geopolitics for an hour or two with me, you know? CanCon would be like the person I would think of, but he already does 5 new shows a day plus his other shows he does. Like he's about to start Why We Vote this afternoon, and he does a show, 3 or 4 nights of the week on top of Badlands Daily. So that's a lot. And if I want to start doing the show more, there's no way he'd be the one. Like he would be the co-host. So it's a good thought, though. Let's see if we got any boosts. Yeah, we got one. All right, Vicky Dirk, $10. You've just recently got me hooked on your shows. On shows you're on, Ghost. Thanks. Sorry it took so long. Well, Vicky, we love having you. Thank you for joining us. Crystal, $25 towards Ghost Starlink Fund. Love that you have your own geopolitics show. I'm not a fan of the short versions. Well, I appreciate that. We like being long in the tooth. So I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. Yeah, if y'all want to do a Badlands boost, you can go badlandsmedia.tv and go to the support tab and Badlands boosts. It's kind of like a Rumble rant, but you can leave it at any time. And go ahead and give the channel a follow. If you're new here, welcome. We are streaming on YouTube, so hopefully we didn't get kicked off. I don't think I said anything too controversial. So hello to everyone out there on YouTube, and I will look into maybe doing another segment of this through the week. But for now, we'll just stick to this one. So thanks again, everyone. Tonight we have Why We Vote at 5:30, I believe, and then Liberty Den tonight at 10:30. I think there's also an Eye of the Storm. Just make sure. Might as well get the whole calendar out there. Right now we have Maha News, so everyone jump over there. Badlands Live is also 9 to 5 every day. Why We Vote at 5:30. Eye of the Storm at 9, or Why We Vote at 7:30. I'm sorry. Eye of the Storm at 9, and then Liberty Den at 10:30. All right, guys. Hit the thumbs up. Thanks again for joining, and we will see you next week.